It's always easier to clean out other people's closets. Alexis Kistler. DZ Tribe Josh Thomas. I'm going to talk to you today about some gut checks, some criteria, some checklists. I love checklists, and there's this catharsis of just being able to just mash into that box the check. I'm done. I killed that thing. I finished it. But everything really has a checklist. There's a lot of power in those because it helps you know I have completed my verification process of being done. And this particular checklist that I want to talk about today is about relationships. And you can take that word to mean whatever you want it to mean. It could be a personal relationship. It could be a business relationship. It could be really anything that you want. But there are three checkboxes, three gut checks, rather, that we need to complete or go through before we're ever going to enter a new relationship of some kind. Now, I want you to think back, if you're married, think back to whenever you decided to enter this relationship with your husband or wife. If you are currently have a business partner, I want you to think back to when you decided to do business with this person. If you have really any kind of relationship, let's say you have a relationship with your car, not like that weird one like on that one show. No, not that. But at some point, you decided, I'm going to buy this car. And that's a relationship. I've made a transactional decision to form a relationship with this car. Don't be weird, guys. It's not like that, just regular. Okay? But you have relationships with everything that you are sharing productivity with in some way. Okay? And so here's the thing. There are three check boxes, and they really do have to be in order. And the first checkbox is, do you trust this person? The checkboxes are about trust, by the way. Do you trust this person? Or do you trust this company? Do you trust this car? Do you trust this house? Do you trust them to be the person or the thing that they represent themselves to be? I'll say that again. Do you trust them to be the person or the thing that they represent themselves to be? Because without that, nothing else matters. Not one single thing matters if you don't trust this person or this company or this thing or whatever or whoever it is to be who they say they are. Think about if you're married. At some point you decided, I trust my wife or whoever, husband or wife or girlfriend or whoever it was at the time. I trust this person. They are a trustworthy person. They represent themselves and they are who they say they are. And they show me that all the time. We got to check that box off because we can't check that box off. The other two do not matter. They don't matter because if there's no trust in the other person, you can't have trust anywhere else. But if you do trust that person, if you do trust that company that you're considering doing business with, then the next question that you really have to ask is, do you trust their plan or do you trust the process? The plan or the process, just really depending on what kind of conversation we're having, what kind of interaction, what kind of relationship we're going to have. Back to the marriage example. Do you trust their plan for the life that you would spend together? Do you trust that? Is that trustworthy? Is that something you can place your trust in by saying, you know what? I like that plan. It doesn't mean that you don't get to make decisions. It just means that you trust this other person to make those decisions and the plan that they have laid out because they actually have a plan and they actually have goals and they are trying to build something meaningful with you. Now let's take that into the business sense. Do you trust this company? Yes, this is a trustworthy company. Okay, first box checked. Second box, do you trust their process for creating the results that they say they're going to create? That's a question that you have to ask, and you have to be able to answer that question. Do I trust this process? Do I believe that this process that has been laid out for me by this company that I trust is going to help me create the result that I'm looking for? And this comes up a lot in coaching. There are a lot of coaches out there. Do you trust this coach? Okay, that's a big one. You got to make sure you trust the coach, okay? If you trust the coach, and then we get to that second one, do I trust their process and their plan? How can I get verification that this process and plan actually works and it's not just a bunch of theory or a bunch of bullshit? But if you have that trust, I know that this process works because I've seen social proof, because conceptually it makes sense to me, because I trust this person or this company to put out a quality product. I know that this is going to produce results. I trust this process. If that's the case, then we have to move on to the last one. And this is where almost everybody trips up. Almost every single person who has trust issues, guess what? It's not with the person or the company. Guess what? It's not with the plan or the process. That last checkbox, that's the hardest one. Because the thing that you need to trust, after you trust the person or the company, after you trust the plan or the process, if both of those are in place, the only thing left to trust is you. Do you trust yourself to follow through? I'll say it again. Do you trust yourself to follow through? And how many of you have been in this situation where you have chosen a person or a company that you trust? You have bought into their plan or their process, and it still failed. And it failed because of you. It failed because of no other reason. Like, you have to take responsibility for every single thing in your life. And I think that's a previous podcast episode that I've done, but if not, it's going to be a future one. And I'll have to look that up for you guys. But every single thing that happens in your life is your own damn fault. It's your own responsibility. And so you have to take responsibility for it. If something fails, it's on you. So do you trust yourself to follow through on this relationship? Do you trust yourself to do the things that need to be done for you to follow this process and complete it? Because it doesn't matter how good the process or the plan is. It doesn't matter how trustworthy or meaningful or great for you that person or that company is if you don't do the work. So do you trust yourself to follow through? And that's the situation where almost every single person is going to trip up. So I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, more than a decade, and I've had my share of sales conversations. And I get into these situations sometimes where I feel like I'm talking to somebody with head trauma because they just don't say the things that match up with reality. And they sometimes don't say things, they say things that don't even match up with what they said earlier in the conversation. And it's the strangest thing. And that's really what caused me to think about this and start developing this idea of the 3 checkboxes. Because I had to figure out what's the actual issue here. Is it me? Is it the opportunity that I've presented? Or is it you? And I had to make sure that I checked off all of my boxes to make sure it wasn't me. I need to be a person of integrity and trust. And I live my life that way. I'm not going to tell you anything that's not true. You can trust me. Whether you do business with me or not, that's up to you. But I'm going to tell you the truth. And then the second one for me is I had to make sure that if I'm presenting something, if I have a plan or a process, that I know for a fact that that is the best plan and the best process for this person. So you can trust me. If I'm bringing this up to you, you can trust this plan and process, because I'm not going to present something to you that isn't going to work. Because again, going back to the first checkbox, you can trust me, the person. And so if you can trust me, the person, I'm going to present a plan or process that I know for a fact is going to work for you. And then you get to decide if that's something that you want to do or not. Now, I want to clarify, just because somebody says no, it doesn't mean that they don't trust you. It doesn't mean they don't trust your process. And it doesn't mean they don't trust themselves to follow through. It may just not be the right fit or the right time, and that's okay. That doesn't matter. You get the freedom to make a choice at any time. But we want to make sure that that choice is not because of one of these three things. We want to make sure that that choice is because I don't want to, or it's not the right time. Those are really the only two reasonable justifications for not doing something. Because if it falls into one of those other three categories, we've got a different problem. So I will accept in a sales situation, I don't want to because it's not something I want to do, or now is not the right time for me to do this because I have other priorities. Those are acceptable answers. Everything else is a lie, to be honest. No pun intended. But we have to be able to trust the people that we are interacting with first, because everything else becomes irrelevant if not. We have to be able to trust the plan or process that they've printed out second, because again, everything else is irrelevant. If I trust someone, but their plan is not going to work. If my mom comes to me and says, Josh, first of all, I trust my mom 100%. But Josh, I heard this idea on the internet where you can take all your money and you put it into this one crypto coin and it will 10x in the next 30 days and we'll be rich and we'll never have to work again. Mom, I love you, but I do not trust that plan. And I am not moving forward on that. Doesn't matter if I trust myself to follow through on it or not, because we cut it off right there, number 2. But if she comes to me with another idea that says, Josh, I want to start a business and I need you to lead it, but I'm gonna bring this value to the table, but I need you to bring this other value to the table. And together we are going to build this business that will work. And I believe in that process. I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. My mom is crafty. She wants to build this craft business where she teaches people how to make crafts and do videos and that sort of thing. And she has come to me a couple of times like, hey, I'd really like to make this work. And I'm like, okay. And I try to help her out and this type of stuff. But I have stopped short of becoming fully 100% involved on that because I can't check the last box. First of all, I'm not crafty. But second of all, I'm not sure if it's something that really I trust myself to follow through on, because it's not something that really excites me. I will help my mom, but I'm not necessarily going to involve myself in that business because I don't trust myself to follow through. It's probably not something that I want to do. So I don't, and it's a trust issue with me, nothing else. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. Just kind of wrapping up here. Let's review. When you're entering a new relationship and you're considering, should I marry this person? Should I date this person? Should I buy this car? Should I sign up for this coaching program? Should I do business with XYZ? Whenever you're doing that, you need to ask yourself first, do I trust this person or this company? And if you can check that box, the next question is, do I trust their plan or their process? And if you can check that box, the final question is, do I trust myself to show up and follow through on this? And if you can check that box, do it. If you can't check that box, don't do it, because it's going to be a disaster. We want to get you to the point to where the only logical response to not doing something is, I don't want to, or now's not the right time. If it's anything else, one of those boxes isn't checked. That'll do it for this episode of the Do Zone Solos. If you've got a topic that you want me to discuss on a future solo, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at JoshThomas80. Until next time, hey, go get something done.